Nikola Tesla's Warden Cliff Tower on Long Island was no mere communication outpost. It was his bold plan to beam unlimited energy worldwide, wirelessly. One fateful night inside, only his unnamed assistant witnessed the breakthrough. She buried the secret for decades until her deathbed confession exposed what they truly discovered. What is this? Let's explore. Nikola Tesla's Warden Cliff Tower in Shoreham, Long Island, resembled a giant wooden skeleton topped with a large metal dome, standing 187 feet tall. Dismissed by many as another wild experiment, it was far more ambitious. Tesla envisioned invention through mental models and simulations. He secured funding from financier JP Morgan, pitching the tower for wireless telegraphy, an early radio-like system for sending messages without wires. Though cutting edge, Tesla concealed his true goal: a global network transmitting power wirelessly through the air or ground to any point on Earth. He shared this only with trusted assistants, one of whom later disclosed secrets the government sought to suppress. Beneath the tower, workers constructed a maze of tunnels and chambers. Tesla aimed to vibrate the structure at Earth's natural electrical frequency, turning the planet into a giant conductor for long-distance energy transmission, grounded in his real experiments and observations. Tesla tested wireless electricity transmission in Colorado Springs, successfully powering devices miles away using a tower reaching 200 feet high. A young female engineer assistant collaborated closely on the Warden Cliff project, later recounting a test where light bulbs miles from the tower illuminated without wires, revolutionary for an era reliant on cables. JP Morgan initially funded it as a communication system, but grew wary upon learning Tesla's true aim: to deliver free global power through the air or ground. This threatened profits for power companies and investors controlling wired grids. By 1903, Tesla faced warnings to abandon his vision and stick to approved plans, yet he persisted, driven by the belief that wireless power would benefit remote and impoverished areas, making electricity free and universal. Tesla ignored warnings to chase universal free electricity for the poor. Heroic genius or reckless dreamer? What's your verdict? Comment and chat with me. But what Tesla didn't reveal that night was the shadowy figures already watching from afar, closing in on his breakthrough. What if the real danger wasn't the power itself, but who would seize it next? One spring night in 1903, long past midnight, Nikola Tesla and his assistant conducted a secret full-capacity test of the Warden Cliff Tower. With no reporters, investors, or records present, Tesla aimed to unleash the system without interference. He first inspected the hidden underground grounding network, iron pipes extending deep into the earth to the water table. Tesla viewed this as an electrical grip on the planet. Activating the coils sent energy surging downward through the pipes, while the dome projected a matching field upward into the atmosphere. Together they formed a giant natural circuit, transmitting power wirelessly via Earth's conductivity. The goal: make the planet carry current, receivable worldwide at tuned frequencies. The assistant later recounted how Tesla nodded to her and threw the main control switch. A low hum rose immediately as copper coils vibrated, evolving into a deep, living rumble. The tower trembled subtly, energy pulsing through its core. Static filled the air, sparks danced across metal rails and instruments. Suddenly, a blinding white-blue arc shot from the dome high into the sky, like steady lightning. Witnesses miles away saw the heavens flash brilliantly. Stranger still, unconnected buildings along the distant shoreline glowed, their lamps flickering on as if by invisible hands. Tesla observed intently, whispering calculations and monitoring gauges. Then trouble struck. Telegraph operators across Long Island reported signal failures and power losses. Gauges spun erratically, exceeding limits. Unstable energy feedback overwhelmed the system. Excess current surged back through the ground faster than regulators could handle, disrupting resonance between coils and Earth's field. Copper windings overheated, and smoke was rising from a generator base. The assistant shouted, but Tesla swiftly yanked the control lever, shutting everything down. The hum ceased, the arc faded, vibrations and silence returned, heavy and profound. Gripping the handle, Tesla murmured, "It works," his voice laced with fear, not triumph. He recognized that the power exceeded expectations. Static crackled faintly post-shutdown as he scribbled secret notes, promising stricter future tests. He swore her to silence, fearing the news would reach dangerous ears. What other chilling messages did Nikola Tesla leave that have never been publicly revealed until now? If you want to see them, I've also added a direct link to it in the pinned comment below this video, and don't forget to come back. The next discovery was about the observers who shouldn't have been outside the laboratory. They thought the night was over. The air outside was calm again, and the machinery had cooled. But as Tesla and his assistant began locking up the control room, she noticed something unsettling. Beyond the fence line at the edge of the trees, she could see silhouettes, men standing still, quietly watching the tower. They did not move. They did not speak. But even in the dim light she could see that they were not ordinary townspeople. Someone else had been there all along, witnessing what Tesla had tried so hard to keep hidden, the observers who shouldn't have been there. After the strange test at Warden Cliff Tower ended and everything went quiet again, the assistant noticed something that made her uneasy. As she stood near the base of the tower trying to process what had just happened, she glanced toward the tree line that bordered the property. Edison's direct current power plants dominated the nation's power needs. It was dark, but her eyes adjusted enough to see several men standing just beyond the fence. They were grouped, silent, and very still. What stood out immediately was their appearance. They were wearing dark uniforms, but there were no visible badges, logos, or any other symbols to show who they were or where they were from. They definitely were not local townspeople. They weren't reporters or curious neighbors. And they didn't look like any of J.P. Morgan's usual staff or business inspectors. The assistant had seen those men before. These were different. These men weren't wandering by accident. They were clearly there for a reason. And they were watching closely. They didn't say anything. They didn't move forward, but they also didn't try to hide. That silence, combined with their presence, gave her a bad feeling. Something was off. By the following morning, even though no newspapers had covered the incident, and no official statements had been made, word had already spread, but only through certain private circles. According to the assistant, Tesla received a letter delivered by hand just hours after sunrise. It came from one of J.P. Morgan's personal representatives. The letter was not friendly. It didn't congratulate Tesla on his progress, or ask about the results. Instead, it gave a warning. The message said that the recent test had raised serious concerns, specifically about what the letter called uncontrolled power dissemination. In simpler terms, they were worried that Tesla's system was sending out energy in ways that could not be tracked, measured, or stopped. There were also whispers about why everything collapsed so fast. Some reports from the time claimed that foreign operatives had witnessed the experiment. These weren't just rumors from conspiracy theorists. Several sources hinted that individuals from outside the United States had been tipped off about the test, and had shown up to watch quietly and from a distance. The assistant later said she believed government agents had been monitoring the site, both from the United States and from foreign countries. She was convinced that someone, or possibly several groups, had known what Tesla was planning and had decided to keep a close eye on him. Tap the like button to let us know this content is making a difference, and if you're watching on your phone, be sure to press the hype button right below. At this point, Tesla's invention was no longer seen as just another scientific experiment. It had crossed a line. People in positions of power began to see it not as a clever innovation, but as a serious threat. A system that could deliver clean, wireless, unlimited energy didn't just challenge business interests. It also challenged governments, military strategies, and global control over resources. If just one man could send energy through the ground or air to any location, then existing power grids, fuel industries, and energy policies could become useless. That level of freedom and decentralization scared a lot of very powerful people. Tesla, of course, had not set out to threaten anyone. He was a scientist and inventor who wanted to improve the world. But the world he was trying to improve was not ready to give up control. This sudden scrutiny would trigger a chain of events that dismantled everything Tesla had built. Just a few days after that letter arrived, J.P. Morgan pulled all financial support from the project. There was no long discussion. There was no second chance. The funding simply stopped. Tesla's team, which had once been large and busy with engineers, builders, and assistants, began to shrink almost overnight. Without money, Tesla could no longer pay his staff. Some were let go. Others left on their own when they realized the project was falling apart. Supplies stopped coming in. Construction work froze. And just like that, Warden Cliff Tower, Tesla's most ambitious project, began to fall apart. But it didn't end with just money problems. Not long after the funding disappeared, a number of officials began showing up at the site. They claimed they were there for official reasons. Some said they were doing safety inspections. Others mentioned possible violations related to patents or electrical safety codes. At first, it all sounded like standard government work, but it quickly became clear that something else was going on. According to the assistant, these visits felt more like raids than inspections. Groups of men began entering Tesla's workspaces, moving through areas that had always been off-limits to outsiders. They started going through his equipment, documents, and personal research materials. She noticed that most of these men were people she had never seen before. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't wear uniforms with clear agency names, and they never explained exactly who they worked for. But they clearly had authority, and a lot of it. Soon, large wooden crates filled with Tesla's equipment began being loaded onto trucks. These crates held sensitive instruments, custom-built tools, and components that Tesla had designed himself for wireless energy transmission. Even worse, his personal notes, lab journals, and technical drawings started disappearing. These were not just random sketches. These were the detailed plans that explained how Warden Cliff worked, how the energy was transmitted, and what the next steps in the project were supposed to be. The assistant later said she believed many of those materials ended up in government hands. There were rumors that federal agents were involved in the removal. Some whispered that this was a secret government operation to take control of Tesla's invention, but no agency ever publicly admitted to taking anything. There were no receipts, no press statements, and no follow-up reports. It was like the whole thing had been erased from the official record. Tesla himself was never quite the same after this. The assistant described him as quiet, withdrawn, and visibly shaken. Although he kept working in private, he never again attempted anything close to what he had tried at Warden Cliff. No more full-scale tests, no more open experiments. He stayed in small rooms, made small devices, and jotted down ideas. But the spark was gone. One day, she asked him if he ever planned to restart the project. He just looked at her and said they realized it worked, and that's why they stopped it. That one sentence stuck with her for the rest of her life. Eventually, Warden Cliff Tower was left to rot. It sat there for years, unused and falling apart. Eventually, the structure was taken down and sold for scrap metal. The wounded tower, still standing in fragments, would require several more attempts to finally bring it down. Tesla didn't fight to stop the demolition. The site that was once meant to revolutionize the world was gone, and the trail of missing records would only grow longer after Tesla's death. Decades after Warden Cliff was dismantled, and its equipment quietly taken away, the mystery surrounding Nikola Tesla's confiscated research only deepened. His assistant would later come forward with revelations that changed everything. By the time Tesla died in January 1943, alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel, the question of what had happened to his Warden Cliff files was already decades old. His finances were exhausted, his health failing, and his last remaining possessions were the locked trunks and filing cabinets that held a lifetime of scientific notebooks. When hotel staff discovered his body, they called the authorities. Within hours, officials arrived, not just the local police, but men representing a government office few Americans had ever heard of. That agency was the Office of Alien Property. On paper, it existed to manage assets belonging to foreign nationals during wartime. But Tesla had been a naturalized U.S. citizen since 1891, which should have excluded him entirely. Despite this, the office moved in immediately, sealing off his room and taking custody of all papers, devices, and personal effects. Witnesses said trunks were rolled out of the hotel under armed guard. Within a day, everything Tesla owned, thousands of pages of notes, technical sketches, correspondence, and unfinished inventions, was gone. The seized collection was vast. Some documents described his well-known work with alternating current, oscillators, and radio signals. Others referenced obscure projects he had mentioned only to a handful of assistants. Among these were blueprints and theoretical notes about a system he called Teleforce, later sensationalized by newspapers as a death ray. Serbian-American Nikola Tesla announces his invention of a revolutionary particle beam weapon, the death ray. Tesla claimed it could focus streams of charged particles through the air to form a beam capable of destroying aircraft hundreds of miles away. He insisted it was not a weapon of conquest, but a defense technology that could make war impossible. He had tried to interest multiple governments, including the United States and the United Kingdom, yet none invested. After his death, every document referring to Teleforce was tagged as sensitive, and most have never been released in full. Equally intriguing were the papers connected to his resonant energy transmission experiments. These are the same principles that powered the original design of the Warden Cliff Tower. When the Office of Alien Property finished cataloging Tesla's belongings after his death, they created a formal government inventory listing every trunk, folder, and technical document collected from his hotel room. But when this list was later reviewed by FBI analysts and military engineers, something didn't add up. Entire sections of Tesla's research were missing, specifically the files that described how he planned to send electrical power wirelessly through the Earth and atmosphere. These included detailed circuit diagrams, field strength measurements, and notes on atmospheric conductivity that would have explained the inner workings of Warden Cliff. When he built this Warden Cliff Tower, it tapped into the energy from the Earth and the energy in the atmosphere. Instead of being recorded as destroyed or lost, those entries were marked in the official notes as missing, and in later revisions relocated. That word relocated was never defined anywhere in the file system, leaving it unclear whether the materials had been sent to another federal agency, a military research division, or a classified archive. The government never explained the transfer, and no receipts or chain of custody forms were released to researchers who later examined the declassified paperwork. This wording suggested a quiet reclassification rather than an accident. Why remove and refile those specific documents if they contained nothing significant? The trail briefly resurfaced 4 decades later. In the 1980s, a batch of declassified FBI files became public through the Freedom of Information Act. Buried among hundreds of pages were inventory sheets referencing certain Warden Cliff-related documents annotated again with the word relocated. Another memo confirmed that a physicist from the National Defense Research Committee had reviewed Tesla's work shortly after his death and noted its potential value to national defense. None of the original notebooks was attached. To this day, no one knows where those particular materials ended up, whether in a military archive, a classified energy program, or destroyed under sealed orders. Years after Warden Cliff Tower fell silent and the world moved on, a determined few set out to find the people who had worked there. These technicians once stood at the heart of Tesla's bold experiment. But when asked to talk, almost all of them shut down completely. Their refusal wasn't casual or polite. It felt deliberate, like they were protecting something or someone. This silence only deepened the mystery surrounding Tesla's forgotten project. One journalist came closer than most to breaking the story wide open. He had spent months preparing an article focused on Tesla's claims of transmitting energy over long distances without wires, and therefore he could create a distribution system for electricity that didn't require poles and wires. But then, just before the article was about to be published, he abruptly withdrew it. When pressed for reasons, he mentioned vague pressures, never revealing who or what was behind them. This sudden silence hinted at unseen forces working hard to keep Tesla's work hidden from the world. It wasn't until just before she died in 1957 that Tesla's assistant finally recorded the full story. Years after Tesla's death, his assistant's old reel-to-reel recording resurfaced in a private estate sale. The tape was badly degraded, but researchers at a small laboratory in New York managed to restore most of it. Her trembling voice described what she had seen that night in 1903, how the sky erupted above the tower, how the ground seemed to vibrate like a living thing, and how the air itself felt charged with something that was not meant to be there. For a long time, her testimony was treated as folklore. Then, decades later, new data forced scientists to look again. In the early 2000s, a historian of electrical engineering named Dr. Andrew Knecht discovered a series of archived telegraph logs from Long Island and the eastern seaboard. The entries from the same night as Tesla's experiment contained multiple reports of electromagnetic disturbance of unknown origin. Operators wrote that their signals had been jammed by continuous interference, not storm static, and that compasses and galvanometers behaved as if the ground itself were electrified. Knecht also found that several magnetic observatories across the Atlantic recorded an unexplained pulse within that same hour. The pattern was identical to the frequency Tesla once claimed would resonate with the Earth's natural electrical field. He believed that you'd be able to pump electrical energy into the Earth at the resonant frequency of the Earth, set up standing waves. When modern physicists mapped those readings, the results were unnerving. The disturbances formed a wave pattern centered almost exactly on Shoreham, New York, the location of Warden Cliff Tower. The pulse had lasted more than 40 minutes before fading. No thunderstorms or solar activity occurred that night. To this day, it remains listed as an anomalous terrestrial resonance event. Even more puzzling was a reference discovered years later in a declassified research file from the National Defense Research Committee, dated in the 1940s. The memo referred to a persistent geophysical signal consistent with Tesla's predicted resonance. Although the language was cautious, it strongly implied that Tesla's 1903 experiment might have left a measurable electromagnetic effect in the layers of the Earth's crust. Several scientists who later examined the file suggested that the Warden cliff discharge could have temporarily energized a natural electrical pathway that already existed within the planet. According to this interpretation, the pulse did not vanish immediately after the tower shut down. Instead, it slowly weakened over time, but never completely disappeared. If this interpretation is accurate, then Tesla may have briefly converted the Earth into a large-scale electrical transmitter without fully understanding how extensive the effect had become. His assistant's frightened observations, therefore, appear less like exaggerations and more like the honest account of someone who witnessed a powerful environmental reaction. No one has ever been able to confirm whether the resonance stopped completely. Modern researchers who have tested the ground around the former Warden cliff site have reported faint and irregular electrical fluctuations that occur at nearly the same frequency Tesla documented in his surviving notes. The measurements are small and close to the limits of detection, yet they remain consistent over time. Some scientists believe these readings are caused by background noise or minor interference from nearby power lines. Others believe the signals are genuine remnants of Tesla's original transmission. The question remains open, but the data suggests that something unusual still lingers beneath the soil at Shoreham, quietly repeating the same electrical rhythm that began on that night in 1903. What do you believe really happened inside Warden Cliff Tower? Thanks for being with us. Leave a comment, like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you next time.